box.
Hello there everyone, welcome back to Blurbox. Okay, here we go. So, I've been working on an Indiana Jones short in the last couple of weeks. It's taken forever. My contract's coming to an end at work and I'm looking for a new job. So I'm super busy, super swamped right now. But what I decided to do in between large projects, which is what I'm doing right now, I'm going to start a new series called Tutorial Time. Oops, hold on. Tutorial Time. Yeah, this is a series where I'm going to do smaller videos where I just do little tutorials in animation and rigging. And today I'm going to do a bouncing ball of sorts. My bouncing ball is going to be Slimer from Ghostbusters. The reason why I did that is because there's about 1 million different bouncing ball tutorials on YouTube. And I wanted to do something interesting and different, so I chose Slimer because he's kind of ball-shaped. And I also want to talk about overlapping action, so I can use his arms and his tongue and his tail to sort of illustrate that. And I also want to talk about spacing and timing and stretch and squash and slow in and slow out, which are all really important principles of animation. So let's get into it. So I'm just going to go over a couple of things in rigging. Mainly today I'm going to talk about, in terms of rigging, I'm going to talk about how to eliminate lines that you see around his waist and his wrists and jaw lines. I want those to disappear when they intersect each other. So I'm going to go over that. I've already rigged this, as you can see, it's basically done. But this is just a little tutorial about those. And then I'm going to animate him bouncing around. It's going to be a lot of fun, yay! Okay, so this is Slimer's arm. Each drawing in harmony. Drawings are those little blue boxes you see in the node view there. Each drawing has 4 layers to it in the art layer tab. Overlay, line, color, and underlay. The 2 main ones are line and color. When you draw a line, an outline in the character in harmony, you want to draw primarily on the line layer. And then to fill in the color, you color it in the color layer. And they are layered on top of each other. So if you draw on the underlay layer, it's going to be beneath the color layer. You draw on the color layer, it's going to be beneath the line layer, etc, etc. So what we want is we want those lines to disappear when they touch the other colored pieces of the rig. So what you're going to do is you're going to bring in a line art node from the node library, and what that does is it separates the line art from the drawing that you connect it to. So inside here is the color, and then outside is the line. And so attaching that node just isolates the line. Now we also can bring in a color node and an underlay node and an overlay node. They all have their own. For this one, we just need the line and color node to be brought in. So we only have a line node attached to that drawing, so all we can see is the line art. I'm also gonna bring in a color node. And what that does is when I attach that, you can also see the color art. By default, you can just see them all, but with these 2 attached, boom, you can see both. Okay, and that's really useful. It means that we can manipulate them separately within one drawing. And what we're going to do is we're going to add a cutter now, and we're going to attach it to the line art node that we just created. And we're going to pull a thread from the drawing, that is the cheeks drawing. We're going to attach it to that cutter as well, and that's going to act as a mask. When they intersect each other, the line node that we attached will disappear. I think I got it. Okay, so now we're going to do the same to every piece that has lines like that. So the jaw to the torso to the tail, and the wrists, because they all have ugly lines on them. So you can see here I'm doing the same to the cheeks and the torso nodes, and the line disappears. Like that. Look at that, magic. I love it. I love it when a rig comes together and like things start to just slot into place. It's a good feeling. Yeah, so I did the same to the body and the tail, and there you go. So I'm adding some details to the tongue now. I also added a line, a center line, and I put a deformer on that. I have a link to a previous video I did where I talk about building and deformers specifically, and I go over it pretty well there. Yeah, so now I'm going to get into cutting the wrist lines. That sounds terrifying and kind of morbid, but that's what I'm going to do. And basically I'm just applying the same idea from what I explained a couple of minutes ago. Look at that, brilliant. Oh yes, love it. So yeah, this is what the character looks like with everything cut and it's all clean. And yeah, save. Okay, let's move into animation. Okay, so I whipped together a background, a 1-point perspective background with a brick wall that I nicked from Google even though it wasn't allowed. I had to cover up the watermarks that were all over it. You can probably see all the bricks looking weird. Anyways, whatever. I digress. I feel like his background kind of fits the theme. Let's just say that. Although I don't like that bin. But whatever. So, we're going to start posing this out. So the first step is to get the key poses in. I've talked about this a decent amount before. But we're going to start with the downward pose. No, we're going to start with the start pose, sorry. And then we're going to get into an antic down, like a squashing, bouncing ball. And then he's going to shoot up. So the reason I chose Slimer is because he has many points of reference that you can squash down and play with. At least that's what I tell myself. The real reason is because I wanted to use a character that everyone knows. You can also use his arms to antic down. When the character jumps, which is what he's going to be doing, he usually, or she, usually antics down with the arms up, and they're kind of building they're sort of storing the energy to shoot themselves up. And usually when the character jumps up, you'll see their arms go down because they're leveraging the body weight up. So I'm going to be animating Slimer pretty much the exact same way I would animate a bouncing ball up and down. And this is just for anticing down and jumping. And then when you get to the top, you really want to slow into the top up here. So that's how I'm going to treat this. And then the arms and the tongue and the other sort of flubbery body parts I'm going to treat as overlapping action. Okay? Cool. Now, one way to make your animation look rubbish is by not paying attention to volume. So when the character squashes down like this, you want the appropriate amount of squash going down. You want the right weight displacement going out. And if you don't pay attention to that, the volumes of the character are going to change and it's going to look like really rubbish. So don't do that. Okay, pay attention to volumes. And the same rule applies to stretching out the character. So when the character is moving quickly, for example, getting a nice little bit of stretch in the animation can really sell it and make it sing. So if you do stretch a character out, make sure you keep an eye on volumes. So because Slimer has limbs, his arms, you can use those to really sell movement and exaggeration in your character. With him, I'm going to have the arms to really trailing behind him, and that's going to show the direction he's going, and it's going to really emphasize movement. When I was in college, we did an assignment which was a bouncing ball up and down with a tail, and it was showing this exact thing. Actually, it was showing a bouncing ball, stretch and squash, timing and spacing, and it had overlapping action with it. So here's the timing chart for Slimer going up. When he gets to the top, it gets very tight. There actually should be another in between there, between the top two. But this just shows what you can get away with. There's a massive gap between the stretch and the slow out. It's a bit cartoony, it's a bit snappy, so it's fine, it works. But this is just a good example of how you really need to slow into your keys properly. If it isn't evenly slowing in and it's jittery, if you have one in between that slows in quicker than the next one, then it's going to suck. It's going to look bad. So pay attention to slow in and slow out. Hooray! So I have the poses worked out. The neutral, the start pose, antic, the breakdown up, the top pose, and breakdown down, and then the squash at the bottom, and then it's just going to repeat. He's just going to bounce up and down. Yeah, I have them worked out. Here they are. Amazing. And I'm just going to work out that stretch now. This is the stretch down. And I'm ready to start in betweening. So there's the breakdown in between the antic and the start pose. And he's going to get into that pose there, the squash down. And I'm going to have him slow out with two in-betweens, the breakdown. And I'm going to really favor the first key. And that's really going to push the snappiness. If you have in-betweens that are closer to the keys, it's called favoring. And if you favor a key quite a bit, meaning if you really, really slow out or slow in, it makes the animation look snappier, generally. And this is quite a snappy animation. So this is a pretty good example of that. In terms of like style, when I animate, it's sort of a mix between snappy and not floaty, but fuller in between animation. But yeah, this is an example of snappy animation. So because Slimer is quite flubbery and rubbery, I can use the cheeks and other parts of the body, such as the torso, to sell overlapping action. That's a good chance for me to show that. And usually when I do overlapping action in TV animation, overlapping action is usually for loose bits of clothing and the hair. Yeah, but this guy doesn't have hair. Or clothes, actually. He's only got 2 teeth and a tongue. So the timing chart for the antic down looks something like this. Again, it's quite snappy, with very tight in-betweens at the top and the bottom. And yeah, these are the keys. First and second. And the breakdown is in between that. So in TV animation, we don't really deal with timing charts, not anymore, because you can just figure it out on the fly. With traditional animation, because it was so time consuming to actually draw this stuff out, you had to figure out the timing beforehand. So I'm figuring out the overlapping action and follow through in the arms right now. I'm going to have them really drag behind. I think I mentioned that. I don't know. But it's going to be dragging right behind him. And it's going to be the last thing to reach the top. In fact, it doesn't stop moving up until it's like 3 frames out of the top key. Speaking of which, let's look at the timing chart of the movement down. Yeah, so here's the top key and the bottom key. And the breakdown is right here, at the top of his head, and it looks something like this. Yeah, it's quite similar to his jump upwards. I'm really favoring the keys, top and bottom, with some stretch and squash. Wicked. So yeah, I'm applying that timing chart to the animation right now, and then when he gets to the bottom, I want him to jump up and down a few times. So I'm just going to repeat. I'm going to copy and paste the animation going up, and it's going to loop. And then he's going to fly off screen. And then we're done. Then I can go to bed. So overlapping action on the tongue. I really want it to stretch down when he goes up. It's going to be really rubbery, and I really want to sell that. So I'm going to really, really, really exaggerate that, which is actually one of the principles of animation. Exaggeration. Hello. And then when he goes up to the top, it's going to, like the arms, it's going to follow through. And it's going to flip up. And it's going to stretch up, coming down. And now I'm applying the same principles to the tail. Now his tail isn't very prominent, so it's not like a mouse tail or anything like that. It's just a sort of thing that hangs off his body. But that's a great way to sell the overlapping action. So we're pretty much done. I'm just going to copy and paste the up and down action, and then it's going to be on a loop. And then he's going to fly off screen, and yeah. Let's take a look at the final render. Hurrah! But before we get to that, I should mention I have a Patreon. If you want to see some cool stuff that I'm doing at the moment, it's £2 a month, $2 a month. Go check it out. It's a lot of fun. And thanks to everyone who has subscribed as a patron. You guys are awesome. Thank you very much. Cheers. Yeah, it turned out okay. The overlapping action is looking good. It's really selling the massive Slimer. I think the spacing and that's alright. It pops a little bit at the end there. Oh, next time. I'll fix it up next time. But yeah, I like a small project. Fun. I hope you learned something. Like and subscribe and all that stuff. Thanks for watching. And yeah, cheers. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.